Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share our story here with you. So just real quick about LucidWorks. LucidWorks makes a suite of AI-powered search products that let some of the world's biggest companies use search to power employee and customer experiences. Really think about it this way. It's what we're trying to do is to figure out how, or to answer the question, how search makes employee engagement personal. And I think in one of Heather's slides, she says it really well. It talks about the tsunami of data, right? And where everybody, no matter what they do in their work lives, is subject to some form of data deluge. And what we're trying to do is to figure out how does search help people deal with this data deluge at work, and is it possible to make technologies that make insights personal, and really to think about people themselves as not just cogs in the wheel or people as one of a million, really, but as one in a million. Indeed, the thing that separates people from machines is fundamentally the notion that we're all different from each other. We all do things differently. We are opinionated, and we have our own views on how to do work. And so, how we think about product building and our go-to-market and our strategy at LucidWorks is really by taking this whole notion of personalization as our central tenet for how we think about technologies. And why that's important is, and I'm going to borrow one more line from what Heather was talking about earlier in her part of the talk, is that in our own personal lives, we're used to very, very sophisticated, intelligent interactions. If you go to Netflix, it tells you what to watch next based on all the other things that you've seen in the past. If you go to Amazon, it gives you very, very sophisticated recommendations on what you might want to buy. Google has made predicting what you might want to do really a science, right? So by keeping track of anything from your Gmail to your purchase history and whatnot. That whole thing is a little bit harder to do at work for a variety of reasons. But really, that if we're able to pull it off, then that can generate some very, very good business outcomes. And the reason for approaching it this way is important, obviously. But this particular quote from Forrester underscores that point quite well. That all organizations possess a lot of data, but all of this data is siloed inside of disconnected applications, and they're generally unavailable to employees at their moments of need. If, however, we are able to fix that and to reduce some of these data silos and make processes a bit more data aware, then we can generate some really positive business outcomes. But all of these outcomes, whether it's through customer care by letting support agents deal with customer support requests faster and better in a more sophisticated way, or letting researchers who might be using data as part of drug discovery processes, or recruiters who try to figure out how to use information from publicly sourced information to make applicant tracking systems and candidate hire processes better. There are any number of things where knowledge-aware systems and data-aware workflows are critical to making for better outcomes. But all of them have this one thing in common. It's that people who are engaged in any one of these different kinds of workflows, whether it's customer support or compliance or fraud detection or what have you, they have to be connected to insights when they can best use them. And so that whole, and it's kind of, let's unpack that sentence just a little bit one more time, is that people have to be connected to insights when it's most useful for them, not before, not after. And there are all kinds of technologies. Data warehouses, for instance, are exceptionally good at doing things like pattern recognition for forecasting, financial forecasting. And there are certain times where that long latency and long lag time is perfectly okay. In fact, it's good. But as part of daily work, as part of what people do in their everyday lives, it's critical that insights are connected to people as and when they need them and as and when they can best use them. Now, it kind of sounds like a prosaic, very simple thing. Okay, I mean, I'm not maybe telling you anything you already don't know, but achieving that actually turns out to be quite difficult, especially because we generate data at a much faster clip than we ever have before. There's probably several orders of magnitude more data in any average organization than there was 10 years ago. And so creating a system that powers the modern digital workplace requires mastery over multiple kinds of data at extremely large scale. And this data can come from systems. So they're metadata and user interactions that happen as people are engaging with text or issuing queries or sharing documents with each other. It could be human-generated data. This is the kind of data that we're oftentimes most favorably predisposed to think about as far as knowledge management solutions go, because they're textual, they're documents that are mostly textual in nature. They could be conversations that sit as audio files. It could be video, but by and large, human-generated data. But there's also data that could be application-generated. By this, what I mean is that they're transactions, things that could sit as well-described relational pieces of data inside of databases or inside of systems of record like CRM or ERP or what have you. The point here being is that being good at any one of these things doesn't really do the job, because people are unpredictable in terms of what they make use of in specific workflows and processes. So systems have to be able to deal with all this kinds of data at extremely large scale and to be able to enrich and extract meaning from them also at very large scale. And that part is difficult because it requires mastery over a whole bunch of different ancillary technologies, anything from machine learning to natural language to search engines, which do facets and topic matching and clustering and things like that. What we do at LucidWorks is to try to simplify all this into a stack of technologies. And it's not by accident that we have AI here called out twice, because in our view, AI is kind of a general purpose catch-all term, but very specifically it has meaning for us in that it enriches data at the point of ingestion, and it optimizes the user interaction at the point of query at user interaction. So we use AI in a couple of different ways, but we also have a highly scalable architecture which underpins all this stuff. So Fusion Server is essentially a very highly scalable NoSQL store that can handle billions of documents, even trillions of documents, and tens of thousands of queries per second. And Fusion App Studio is a set of UI widgets and templates that let people build very sophisticated search-based applications that are then delivered as components in the digital workplace. So just call out a couple of things here in slight bit more detail. Fusion AI, keep in mind the thing on the left here indicates data ingestion, and then the thing as you go farther out into the right is really about user interaction. So anything from understanding parts of speech, phrase detection, classifying documents, understanding anomalies, clustering, things like that. And then all of this is processed and stored into a very highly scalable data store, which is essentially a search engine. And we offer a bunch of capabilities that surround that let people enrich the data and to do more sophisticated things with it, including connectivity to multiple kinds of data sources, pipelines for enriching data, scheduling, rules that override machine-driven relevancy, things like that. And so all of this is delivered as a set of services which run on any public cloud or in our customers' own private cloud environments. And it provides a very extensible, scalable, and secure set of capabilities. Now, let's maybe switch gears a little bit and see how do these technologies look like when we take these personalized experiences and actually look at how people engage with them at work. Now, our whole product design philosophy for the modern digital workplace is underpinned on three core tenets. Number one is that people should work in a similar kind of an interaction paradigm as what they're used to in their own personal lives. So the same sophisticated kinds of interactions that they're used to seeing at with Netflix or Google Now or Alexa. So we want to bring consumer-like experiences to the workplace. And the second tenet is that we aim to customize the process of insight discovery, because no two people are the same, no two workflows are identical, because people in their context and what they do changes all the time, minute by minute, sometimes second by second. So the process of generating insights and the process of making them available to people should be customizable. And that thirdly, that all of our technologies should help improve employee engagement and retention. So And the process for how that happens is, as I mentioned earlier, is we call it hyper-personalization. But there are kind of three core enabling technologies which underpin this whole notion of hyper-personalization. Number one is data exploration, and that people both need a way to be able to interrogate and look at data and extract and find insights on their own terms. So free-form exploration and possibly some structured as well. And second, integration. By integration, what I mean is it's this mastery over any kind of data. So a platform should support this process, this notion of any kind of data, by having a very rich and sophisticated set of data integration tools. And the third is curation. And by curation, what I mean is really augmenting people with sophisticated technologies. The technologies have an opinion on what things should be, and they're frequently right, but they're also wrong in many instances. So we want to be able to have technologies that let people override machine-driven relevancy with the things that they know heuristically, intrinsically to be different. Let's look at each of these real quick in terms of by looking at a fictional set of interactions. So in this, we're looking at a person who works in an energy company who asks a simple question: who knows about oil and gas in Brazil? And so this simple design paradigm serves to illustrate a couple of things. Number one is that people don't talk in SQL. People talk in plain language, and that as we face this data deluge problem in our daily lives, we want to be able to look at data and talk to it, interact with it in the same way that we deal with in our personal lives. And so our platform Fusion has a very rich set of NLP capabilities that let people engage with technology on their own terms and just in plain language. But that very simple user interaction requires some pretty sophisticated things to pull off. Number one is in the scalable incorporation of signals. Signals here really are just user behavior, is the actual interaction that people have with any piece of data, and to continuously use that to build a set of self-learning, self-improving machine learning models that do anything from document classification to personalization and recommendations, collaborative filtering, things like that, various kinds of techniques. And that these results then have to be personalized across billions of documents, or have to be able to support scale at billions of documents and thousands of queries per second. And so kind of let's expand that a bit further to talk about what does that look like for integration. So in the same question, who knows about oil and gas in Brazil? We can look at that at a second order as illustrating a couple of other more interesting things. So here the results set shows a whole bunch of things. That the answers to the simple question might sit in PowerPoint decks or in a PDF document on the public company's website in their investor relations site, or inside of file systems in the company, or it could be outside from the public internet. So the simple question, who knows about oil and gas in Brazil, can take on some very sophisticated contours, and the way to answer this question properly and to let people explore them on their own terms then requires a set of integration components that should be equally as facile. And that if we do it properly, then the side effect from it is that it eliminates data silos and reduces tribal wisdom. So people don't have to go to their buddy Jim and ask him a particular question. They can engage with systems that answer those. And the byproduct is that it improves search precision, paints a much more complete picture, and ultimately reduces risk. And so my favorite part of all this stuff is about curation. So we kind of take this to its natural conclusion then, is who knows about oil and gas in Brazil. Here what we're trying to show is a pinned result. So clearly in any organization, including like yours, you have people who know things more than machines do. So what we're trying to do here is to give people the ability to override the results and relevancy that a machine itself might be able to generate by quickly and easily building rules that override relevancy. And if we're able to do this, then it enables employees to quickly find the things that exactly as and when they need them. It lets them talk to their machines in plain language, and it improves quality and relevancy over time. So as just a quick proof point, one of our customers, Red Hat, uses our technology Fusion in a couple of different areas. And by capturing user behavior signals and all the documents and extracting intelligence from them, they're able to improve their customer support dramatically by improving the quality of calls and by deflecting service requests. I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm going to jump into this make a quick plug for KM World here. So we are a long-standing sponsor of KM World. We're there again this year in booth 201. I'm actually doing the keynote on the morning of November 7th. So if any of you are so inclined, please come and visit us. We'll be there. Love to talk about any of this stuff in much more detail. We're also well covered by all the analysts, so we're a visionary in the Gartner's Magic Quadrant for Insight Engines, as well as a leader in Forrester's Wave for cognitive search. And so both of those are available for download from our website. And with that, I'm going to stop and hand it back over to Mary D.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we are now ready to move on to some questions from our viewers. And I will remind our viewers that if you have a question, put it into that question box, click submit. We're still open for questions. So let's see what we've got here. Sherry, this one is for you, I believe. So how can we determine if a problem is suitable for solving with AI and or cognitive computing?
Well, from a Northern Light perspective, I think as our focus is on text-based documents, things that we can analyze the words in them, we're looking for problems that there's a lot of data surrounding the question and the problem, and that it can be used with semantic analysis to find out, to extract the information from the sentences in those documents to point out at information that could be used for learning. But the point of it is that, a lot of things have a lot of data, and you can use machine learning and semantic analysis to understand them better. But the critical aspect is to find a problem that is critical to your business. So among all those things you could apply machine learning to, what is the problem that is going to make the most impact to you and your business? Okay.
So impact to the business then. And let's see, what else have we got here? Heather, is it possible to use the same knowledge management technology for both customer and employee use cases? And if it is the same, then how does this work if different groups are responsible for the management of knowledge? So talk to me a little bit about customer and employee.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is possible. I mean, there's obviously two different use cases, but from my perspective, the key is if you can actually use the same technology, the same platform for both, you get the organizational efficiencies and financial efficiencies actually in terms of total cost of ownership. But with a caveat that you absolutely need a system that's going to allow for the flexibility of that slicing and dicing your knowledge appropriately for the audience. And that tends to be a combination of flexibility in terms of the way that the knowledge can be stored, retrieved, and created, as well as the flexibility in terms of the technology or search that you're using to then access the information. So, sort of standard things like multiple answers to a single question, or being able to make certain whole areas of information available to one user group and not another. And then it takes you into the interesting use cases of actually personalizing that information on a case-by-case basis depending on other data factors.
Wouldn't you know more about the employees than you would about the customers, or would you know the same amount to personalize?
It depends on who the groups are. We've seen a lot of use cases, for example, within HR, where actually that anonymity of the user is actually seen as a core reason why employees may use a knowledge automation system as opposed to ringing up the HR director. So what I would say is it really depends. Obviously, if the information is available, you can use it to start personalizing content. But depending on the use case, you could have a lot of information about your customers and also a lot of information about your employees that you may choose not to use in some cases.
Interesting. This is kind of an interesting question that's come in. It's aimed at Vivek, but I'd actually like the other two of you to chime in on it. And here's the question. As the workforce ages, how do you see KM evolving to address the problem of the aging workforce taking the knowledge when they retire?
So we see it in our target customers are some of the biggest companies in the world, and they are front and center in dealing with demographic changes. The consequence of it really is that as millennials start to enter the workforce in large numbers, they have expectations of technology which look very different from people who came of age, people like me, right, who first saw the internet in 1994. So it's quite different, the way that younger people are used to technology and their expectations of it. The consequence of it really is that this tacit knowledge, the way that things work, is oftentimes inside of people's heads, and it's preserved in ways that aren't structured in technologies and systems and storage and whatnot. So the trick really is to figure out how to let people work in the ways that they normally are, with technologies that don't look spooky and look like they're tracking what they do, but by enabling them to work together collaboratively and really fostering a sense of engagement. And for us, we kind of think about search as one of the key enablers in doing that, because search is kind of a friendly technology, right? I always say that it's kind of the perfect UI. Anybody can use it. It doesn't require an instruction manual, but it can hide an enormous amount of complexity. So just by letting people use a search box to engage with different kinds of data creates an enormous amount of additional insights and user behavior as a byproduct, which can preserve tacit knowledge in a way that doesn't explicitly require people to write things down. It's not a panacea, and it doesn't solve all problems, but it can go quite a long way in doing that.
Yeah, I would say that that's an interesting idea, and also goes along with the idea of allowing people to capture their insights and their ideas in small little chunks as they have them. And maybe just, as you're taking a walk, speaking into your app, your ideas or your training without having to write a whole document or piece of documentation, which can be daunting and time-consuming. If you can just capture that little bit of information and submit it into the knowledge system and then let it be curated to send to the people who need to know, then that makes it a lot easier.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. Okay, let me move on here to some other questions that have come in. This one is, to what extent is it possible to perform analytics on contributions from the workforce with information from determined structured sources? And by that apparently is meant unstructured information with structured information. So this isn't directed to anybody in particular, but let me start on this one with Vivek.
Analytics is critical to understanding how any system works. We have inside of Fusion, there's a wide variety of instrumentation that indicates system behavior and performance, and the thing that we always kind of rely on is outcomes. Can you measure an outcome? And that oftentimes is the best indicator of whether the system itself functions properly or not. We can, and we'll lead you to a better set of conclusions than monitoring individual pieces inside of a process. If we do that, if we only look at the individual elements within a process, for instance, contributions from users or user engagement or what have you, those things are useful, of course, but they're going to lead you invariably to bad conclusions. You kind of want to look at the beginning and end of the process, the end of the outcome, at the end of the process to measure outcomes, not necessarily all the workflow, the process flow elements inside of it. And
okay.
so a tangible example of that is for, look at support, right? Support's a good thing, and you can say, how do you measure whether support's working well or not? It could be by the level of engagement that customers have with the support. It could be by how many calls are deflected or what's the improvement over time. It could be by how quickly support agents are able to diagnose problems. So those things are better outcome indicators than things inside of it, right? How long are people spending dwell times on the support side, for instance? Those metrics invariably will lead to bad places.
Yeah. So I guess part of this is just before you start in on this question, it really is determining what analytics you want to get that would be useful to you. Heather, did you want to contribute to this? Something about performing analytics on contributions from the workforce?
Sure. Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what Vivek was saying in terms of actually making sure that what you have is both monitorable but actually leads to actionable insight, which is quite key. And so when you're looking at outcomes, you do want to take, I guess, KPIs that are going to be relevant to your organization and where and how the technology is being used. And it's going to be different across the organization. But ultimately, it goes back to what I was saying. If you can actually be driving, technology that's going to impact effort and efficiency, that in and of itself will then lead to measurable outcomes, whether they're KPIs within your contact center, within your HR help desk, back office, or even on your website.
Is there a specific or some specific KPIs that you think people should be looking at?
I think it depends on which part of the organization you're looking at. When you're looking, for example, at a support center, and many of the things that Vivek was saying are absolutely right in terms of, looking at what first call resolution or speed to answer, looking at the rates at which you're actually having to transfer calls, but then also looking at things, for example, like employee engagement, who's actually using the system. And for me, that's a real key thing, because it doesn't matter where and how it's deployed. If you can actually start looking at how many people are using the system and actually getting information from the knowledge they're consuming, that's a real key indicator, as well as, I would say, actually contributing to it. When I'm looking at a lot of knowledge management systems, when they fail is when it's a one-way contribution mechanism. If you actually get the community that's using the system to start participating and contributing that knowledge to it, contributing to that curation of the information, that's a really good indicator that what you have is a system that then contains relevant information.
Okay, excellent. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions today, and we apologize that we were unable to get to all of your questions. But as I stated earlier, all those questions will be answered via email. So I would like to thank our speakers today, Sherry Larson, SVP of Product Design and Delivery, Northern Light, Heather Richards, VP KM Product Strategy, Verint, and Vivek Sriram, Chief Marketing Officer, LucidWorks. If you would like to review this event or send it to a colleague, please use the same URL that you used for today's event, and it will be archived for 90 days. Plus, you will receive an email tomorrow with the URL to view the archive within approximately 24 hours. And just for participating in today's event, you could win this $100 American Express card. The winner will be announced on October the 31st, Halloween, and we will reach out via email if you are selected as this month's winner. Plus, stay on the console, and you will be redirected to where you can learn about the KM World Conference and even get $100 off the registration fee. Just use code DH19 and come visit some of today's sponsors, and much, much more. And the conferences are at the JW Marriott Hotel in Washington, D.C., November 4 through 7. And thank you again for joining us.